Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our Chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition. We turned out a poem 570, I Could Die to Know. The I Could Die will remind us of our poem, a study of 486. Another, can we call it another watching poem? Emily looking out windows, for example. You'll remember this when we did 253. She says it this way: you see, I cannot see your lifetime. I must guess how many times it ached for me today. Confess how many times for my far sake the brave eyes film. But I guess, guessing hurts. Mine gets so dim, too vague the face my own so patient covers. Too far the strength my timidness enfolds, haunting the heart like her translated faces, teasing the want. It only can suffice. And you guys remember when we did 498, I envy the seas whereon he rides. I envy spokes of wheels of chariots that him convey. I envy crooked hills that gaze upon his journey. How easy all can see. What is forbidden utterly is heaven unto me. I envy nests of sparrows that dot his distant eaves. The wealthy fly, you'll pay attention to the fly because we're going to come back to it here. Upon his pane, the happy, happy leaves that just abroad his window have summer's leave to play. The earrings of Pizarro could not obtain for me. I envy light that wakes him and bells that boldly ring to tell him it is noon abroad, myself be noon to him. Yet interdict my blossom and abrogate my bee, lest noon in everlasting night drop Gabriel and me. Now, our assumptions you've been following are stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. Hopefully you've worked through our set of introductory comments as well as the preceding 569 poems. We just finished with 569, I reckon, when I count. Now, here we have an ordinary city scene, but as one scholar has pointed out, this is an example of Emily's realism, somehow capturing, much like Walt Whitman, the urban chaos that is connected to what she sees out her window. Emily living most of her adult life within her father's house, much of it in her bedroom, looking out a window out onto life itself. By the way, pay attention to the amazing verbs. Just circle them as you read them to appreciate her use of the verbs in this poem. I could die to know, 'tis a trifling knowledge. Newsboys salute the door, carts joggle by, morning's bold face stares in the window, where but mine, the charter of the least fly. Houses hunch the house with their brick shoulders. Coals from a rolling load rattle how near to the very square. His foot is passing possibly this moment, while I dream here. Now, of course, we've got two things happening simultaneously, yes? So she's looking out her window on the events of life, and at the same time dreaming about him. Who is him? Well, this has always been the subject of huge debate because nobody's quite sure who the him of all these poems are. Notice she says first, I could die, taking us again back to 486. To know, I would love to know what he's doing right now. But what else is going on? Think of it this way. The world goes on for the lover. The world goes on, and then there's this other private affair in the mind, where the lover is always thinking about the loved, and then noticing all the other stuff that's going on. For example, notice, trifling knowledge to know what? Newsboys saluting the door. Again, notice the verbs here. Carts joggling by, morning's bold face, staring in the window, where but mine, and then she shares it with a fly. Of course, we can't help but think about our study of 511 and her use of flies. 140, of course, 465, I heard a fly buzz when I died. 498, 570, 1388, and 1628 are the poems where she mentions flies. Houses hunch the house. Now, some have said this is barns. What she means is barns with their brick shoulders. It's difficult, though, to know. In other words, everything's packed in the city, if you will. Coals from a rolling load rattle how near. Did you see the dashes that simulate the sound, maybe, of the wagon carrying the coal, the heavy coal? To the very square of the middle of town. His foot is passing. Are we talking about Sam Boyles? Are we talking about Wadsworth? Who are we talking about? Well, nobody knows. His foot is passing, possibly this moment, while I dream here. Of course, You could make the argument that the here is a room. You could make the argument that the here is this page that she's writing on right here, right now. And of course, the dream of what, of who, of whom, none of this is clear. But what are we going to make of a poem like this at Message at 2A? I think her argument is that absence is difficult, right? When you're missing the person that you care for, it's very difficult. All the rest of the world goes on, and there you are, stuck in your room, trying to figure out how you're going to live with it. At 2B, well, obviously the verbs are quite remarkable here. Salute, joggle, stares, hunch, rattle, dream. The scholar David Priest has pointed out that Emily might actually be channeling that classic line from Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra, Act 1, Scene 5, line 18, and following, where she says, "Where thinkest thou he is now?" Cleopatra, obviously. "Where thinkest thou he is now? Stands he, or sits he, or does he walk, or is he on his horse?" As she's thinking about her lover. I can't help but read a poem like this and think of Walt Whitman's Crossing Brooklyn Ferry. Go back to our study of it. We gave lectures on every one of the poems in the deathbed edition of Lisa Grass at learnstrong.net. We call that series Talks with Walt. Finally, at 3B, what was a time when you missed your pal and the rest of the world was going on, but you just didn't care, and all you could do was dream? Thank you.